The Journey Through a Distant Land, Volume 2, The Expansion of Modern Science by Amalgamating Royal Science by Zephyr Y. Bakerman, M.B. Reading 3, Continuation of Article 2.1. Mankind/neutron principality sent forth to physical manifestation. Next, we can converse about the neutron/mankind. The neutron/mankind has 2 down quarks and 1 up quark, which shows that the neutron/mankind is also threefold in nature. The first down quark is shown to be understood as the intellectual center, the universal mind of mankind, the spiritual apparatus where the thoughts/angels are to be logged and processed, which is comprehended in royal science to show how the fallen state of this thinking center is now lowered or weakened by the mixture of the newly finite, manifested, wrathful power of Yahveh in the form of a tree of knowledge or the tree of participation of good and evil that was only to be as a power source to produce the holy meek life of joy and love, showing how infinite power had rested in great humility and loving kindness, which the electron/Satan did not feel should have rested in such a state. For the electron/Satan felt it should have rested in great fury and destruction, in pride, in selfhood, and a tyrannical rulership of anger. This is beautifully articulated in the royal science. Isaiah 14:12-15. How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut down to the ground, which did weaken the nations? For thou hast said in thy heart, I will ascend into the heavens. I will exalt my throne above the stars of Elohim. I will sit also upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. Yet thou shalt be brought down to hell, to the sides of the pit. This thinking center or intellectual apparatus in mankind has now the capability or the capacity to hear 2 types of thoughts/angels, the good and the evil, but must choose to bring one of these 2 entities into the world. Mankind is directly responsible of releasing these invisible creatures or thoughts from the invisible realms into this physical earth by acting out what he or she hears and perceives in those invisible worlds by the act of congealment and judging between these angels/thoughts, good or evil. This shows that mankind is the gatekeeper of these entities, which is plainly spoken of in the royal archives. 1 Corinthians 6:3. Know ye not that we shall judge angels? How much more things that pertain to this life? The second down quark is also viewed in this true light in royal science as the discombobulating factor in the emotional center of the physical fallen man or woman. The now conflagrated emotional center has all malignant animal/emotional forms centered in the chambers of the heart, just like the animals were in the center or heart of the Ark of Noah in royal science. Mankind has in his fallen heart a great amount of insidious animalistic desires and passions in various concupiscent forms. That has to be transformed into beautiful loving forms that can resist the debaucherous and maleficent animal forms, allowing nothing but good relationships with these animal/emotions. ruling in an interaction to exist in the human tabernacle or ark in a calm and peaceful state with one another, with the good symbolistic forms as well as the evil, or clean and unclean, a perfect harmony by incorporating 5 times more light forms, clean or good emotions to establish balance in oneself, like the example in the Royal Archives, Genesis 7:2. Of every clean beast thou shalt take to thee by 7s, the male and his female, and of beasts that are not clean by 2, the male and his female. Now, the only upcork of the neutron represents the fleshly body that fell from its higher glory to a finite lower existence subject to mundane experience, limited to an automatic working of a false personality via the mind of the carnality. This fleshly ark, or temple, since the fall, has an internal gravitational pull towards the outer court of the physical world, distracting the disposition of the soul from the elevation to the higher spiritual substance, to which the original body was made of, which is the heavenly crystalline substance only existing and comprehended in the inherent paradise/nucleus. 1 Corinthians 15:50. Now this I say, brethren, that flesh and blood cannot inherit the kingdom of Elohim, neither do corruption inherit incorruption. This flesh, animal, body, or upcork is very weak and has a very limited amount of time here on corrupt earth. Contrast to the eternal earth or new earth state. This body has to be regenerated. It has to be born again right in the midst of the etheric fire in the air. It has to be refined, purified by fire, or the radioactive decaying force, the wrathful astringency of this temporal nature called the anger of Yahveh.
Genesis 3:17.
Acting as a spiritual chemical activity, falling thoughts or of evil suggestive words designed with the resisting power of the mind and love to annihilate the anti-word completely out of the center of the human soul, which the soul is the image form of deity. This action upon the souls of mankind is the last battle to push the hell consciousness with all its perceptions of evil completely out of mind, rendering wickedness inaccessible in universal consciousness, the holy states of the heavens. The illusionary false reality of the electron/Satan. Now we can talk about the composition of the electron/Satan and its functions as a particle of the universe. The electron/Satan is a fundamental particle and is too small to be seen by an imaginable instrument of observation. In the center point or central point of the electron/Satan lays a weak charge, entirely separate from electrical charge. This gives rise to the weak nuclear force. This is seen in royal science in 2 Corinthians 11:14. No wonder, for even Satan disguised himself as an angel of light. This force causes radioactive decay, the universal chemical activity. And his or its diameter is much smaller than a proton. The electron/Satan also has an electrical charge.
Angel of light.
This charge is the generator of the electrical magnetic force. This is seen by the conduit of the Berkeley currents that connects all intergalactic bodies that our modern intelligentsia knows about and attempts to manipulate the prison planet Saturn. This drop-off of strength is pretty dramatic as you move away from the electron/Satan. This can be seen in royal science by the dramatic holiness that is formed in a person who moves away from the electron/Satan. The electrical magnetic force is how electron/Satan interacts with other electrical charged particles and with magnetic fields. The above said interactions make the structure of atoms and molecules possible and are the cause of all the complexity we see around the universe, the mundane existence. As was seen above, the proton/Yahweh and the neutron/mankind are made of other smaller particles called quarks, showing that these particles have substance of life. Now, what is the electron/Satan made of? This answer is nothing. The electron/Satan is not made of anything that we can know of. There is no internal structure that has been found for the electron/Satan. The only known difference from one electron to another, which are the demonic forces and the different scales of dark powers and principalities that they hold, is the orientation of magnetic moments in the energy acquired quantum physics. Jesse H. Brewer, Professor Emeritus from the Department of Physics and Astronomy, University of British Columbia, quotes thus: "It's natural enough to imagine that a thing like an electron must be made of stuff. That's because big things that we can see and handle are indeed made up of large quantities of literal things. But when you get down to the smallest things of all, like electrons, it doesn't seem to be anything smaller for them to be made of. Ancient Greek philosophers thought this might be the case. Turns out they are right." As we can see, dear readers, Satan/electron has an illusionary existence, which has no substance of life integrated in itself. Therefore, we can rightfully conclude that the electron/Satan is a dead thing that has no real existence in the upper regions of higher thought, of the higher heavens or consciousness. The only reality the electron/Satan seems to have is in this three-dimensional world limited to time and space that has a sorrowful beginning and also a woeful end. This false reality of the three-dimensional plane is received and perceived only in the carnal mind of the lower, troublesome, and very complex false mind of the hell consciousness. I give it to the reader to contemplate a reality devoid of the negative charge. A world totally void of the complexity of the physical realm. A world totally immersed in the positive light of splendor. A world full of simplicity with truth in the simplest form. End of Article 2.1.